I've been really on my own when I think about it. Yeah, my house is not a home when I think about it. I've been feeling so alone when I think about it. Yeah, nobody really got me when I think about it. I'm really on my own when I think about it.
Now, if you guys have been watching the channel for the last couple years, you guys know I love learning about like Nickelodeon like theories and Disney Channel theories and just like adult jokes in the shows that we grew up on. I love that. And for today's video, we got 25 things only adults notice in Nickelodeon shows. Let's jump up in it.
Many of us grew up watching Nickelodeon shows, with most of their greatest hits being animated series from the 90s. They were huge hits and still hold special places in the hearts of many people even today. But despite how popular they were, the writers of these shows found many ways to sneak in some very adult humor into their shows. Sometimes so explicit we have to wonder just how they got into the show in the first place. Let's put the spotlight on all these very adult moments from 90s Nick classics, including the Rugrats and some newer hits including iCarly. Let's start things off with a classic, Hey Arnold, which made its debut all the way back in 1996. The show's most endearing quality is perhaps the romantic element between Arnold and Helga. Helga actually serves as an antagonist for most of the series, but all that is actually a foil for how she truly feels about Arnold. And how she feels really becomes very apparent in the 4th season, when Helga was making some notes and said to herself that,
"Arnold, you make my girlhood tremble."
How did this make it into a kid's show?
Oh, damn.
Even more embarrassing is that Helga's parrot hears this phrase and begins repeating it over and over again for us to hear.
"Arnold, you make my girlhood tremble."
Now let's divert some attention to another classic and beloved show, perhaps one of the most iconic shows in Nickelodeon's catalog. That show is, of course, SpongeBob SquarePants. The show has been the subject of extreme popularity and extreme scrutiny, but all the while there are quite a few adult moments in the show, some of them hiding in plain sight. For instance, the most obvious one on the show, the actual location of the Krusty Krab. This restaurant already sounds pretty gross and not the best place to order your meal, but when you consider it's located in Bikini Bottom, it begins to sound like some really bad decisions. Things get fairly odd in this next entry, which naturally features the show Fairly OddParents. He may seem cute and innocent, but Timmy is usually up to something that could get him into trouble. For this one, let's just hope he has a lock on his door. This could have been an innocent and honest moment, as Timmy needs to bring some toilet paper upstairs to his room, but when he says he needs some alone time and requests that his parents leave him alone, the justification for those paper towels takes on a whole new meaning. No wonder his parents look so alarmed and shocked. They know full well what's going on, but can't believe Timmy's being so forward about it. Sometimes the adult humor in kids' shows is really subtle. It goes over the heads of just about every kid, and possibly even some adults if the joke is sly enough. This is not the case for Rocco's Modern Life, which is about as direct and explicit as one can be on a children's animated show. And
Bruh, I look back at Rocco nowadays and I'm like, my mom let me watch this? Like, Rocco was tripping, man. They were sick, bro. Like, I urge you, if you haven't seen Rocco in a while, go rewatch it. You're gonna be shocked to your core. Like, what?
And even then, it's amazing they got into the final script. Take this moment, for example,
It
during the
says
episode
Sucko.
Who Gives a Buck, which saw Rocco buying a new dog bowl for Spunky. The shopkeeper then says,
"Why don't you just jump on our doggy-style bow ride? Everybody on their hands and knees?"
Yep, they went there. This show isn't exactly known for being subtle, and the new Netflix reboot will likely feature the same risque humor. Adult humor wasn't limited to just the animated hits of the 90s when it came to Nickelodeon shows either. The hit live-action sitcom iCarly is also known for having a few dirty jokes in its script that you likely missed the first time. Take this one. Seeing as iCarly is a fairly modern show, it has humor that feels very contemporary. That's why adults will have definitely understood why Guppy's face was the way it was when they saw that he was reading a book titled Nifty Shades of Beige. If it's anything like the real thing, he's likely getting an education of sorts. We're not sure if he's horrified or amazed, but his face says it all. He definitely was caught off guard. But when it comes to adult humor in Nickelodeon shows, there is only one show that takes the crown. And to be honest, we could have probably done a whole video about all the adult and gross humor that was found in Ren and Stimpy. If you ever watched that show back in the day, you know what we're talking about. This moment isn't even the biggest offender on the show. We'll get to those later on. In this episode, Ren's cousin Sven comes to visit and joins him in Stimpy's litter box. It doesn't take long to see that Sven is enjoying himself a bit too much and asks for some privacy. Fun fact, this episode actually had to be censored as Sven was originally supposed to say,
I'm a sword swallower.
but before we get—
Bro, what? Hey, yo. Hey. Wait a minute. Men said what now? Nah, that's wild.
Fun fact, this episode actually had to be censored as Sven was originally supposed to say,
I'm a sword swallower.
Look, man, I wasn't a real big fan of Ren and Stimpy. I wasn't like a huge fan of it. I never watched it that much, but like I watched it often. But like that's crazy, bro. Like that's wild that they would say something like that. Like, bro, that's crazy.
but before we get into more Ren and Stimpy nonsense, let's see what sort of shenanigans the Rugrats got up to. This joke actually hails from the Rugrats spin-off All Grown Up, which means that the jokes are even more in your face this time around, especially with this one. In the reboot, Susie ends up going on a date and her man doesn't exactly know how to hide things and basically showing what he's packing under his pants for
That's wild. I remember watching that episode when it premiered. I remember this scene, and I never.
Susie to see. He seems very proud of himself, and even Susie is taking a peek to see what lies beneath. Okay, this is getting weird. On to the next one. Which takes us back to the Fairly OddParents and the craziness that the writers and animators snuck into the show that totally went over our sweet, innocent heads as children. Ah, simpler times. This moment sees the goat Chompy coming to the rescue of Vicky, who is locked in a stockade at the police station. While this isn't the most shocking thing on this list, Chompy's creepy stare and his position behind Vicky make one think something worse than a wedgie is about to happen. If you pause it at the right moment too, Vicky's face looks very concerned about a goat rummaging behind her. We'd be too. Thankfully, the show didn't show the reverse angle, or Nick's censors would have been deleting the scene pretty quickly. Let's make a pit stop to one of the two entries that feature the Animaniacs. Technically, the show was produced by WB, but it aired on Nick and Nicktoons for several years and even had an altered theme just for Nick. Anyway, this joke likely flew over the heads of some adults as it's very sly and clever, which makes the joke even that much better, and it all started with a misunderstanding. In this one, Yakko asks Dot to dust for Prince. Dot then comes back into frame holding the artist formerly known as Prince. Yakko then corrects her, reiterating that he wants fingerprints. Dot gives Yakko this look and tells him that she doesn't think that's a good idea, and Prince gives himself an annoyed facepalm due to the exchange. If you didn't get that joke, well, you're too young. Let's go back to Bikini.
What? Hold on. Wait a minute. Nah.
Prince. Dot gives Yakko this look and tells him that she doesn't think that's a good idea, and Prince gives himself an annoyed facepalm due to the exchange. If you didn't get that joke, well...
Maybe I'm slow? Hold on. I don't get it.
Dot then comes back into frame holding the artist formerly known as Prince. Yakko then corrects her, reiterating that he wants fingerprints. Dot gives Yakko this look and tells him that she doesn't think that's a good idea, and Prince gives himself an annoyed facepalm due to the exchange. If you didn't get that joke, well, you're too young. Let's go back to Bikini Bottom here and see what other sort of jokes the SpongeBob writers put in the show. SpongeBob actually has more of these than you might have realized, but that's part of what made SpongeBob so great. In this bit, SpongeBob finds some soap in a barrel, referring to them as doubloons. He then casually instructs Gary not to drop them, giving him a wink. While this is funny due to the fact that Gary the Snail has no hands, it's also a reference to a common prison line, which would result in bad things happening to anyone who dropped the soap in a shower. Like we said earlier, Rocco's Modern Life is another show that's perhaps more obvious and direct with its adult humor. We're quite certain that many kids could have caught this joke depending on how old they were. The reason they could have likely caught it is to the brand recognition of the Playboy magazine, which has showed up in countless movies and shows. In Rocco's Modern Life, a side character at some sort of carnival ride can be seen reading a copy of Play Slug, which features a well-endowed female model on the cover. Even more adult is the lever the worker is holding and how straight it's standing. Now there's a metaphor that kids will not have caught right away. No show on Nickelodeon is safe from throwing in some adult humor. That includes the seemingly innocent show Doug, which was one of the first original Nicktoons to launch on Nickelodeon. But that doesn't mean that this heartfelt show didn't have its moments. It totally did. When asked by Patty why Doug's papier-mâché volcano keeps erupting, Doug tells her it's because he loves her. Sweet, sure, but when you read between the lines, you begin to understand exactly how Doug feels using the volcano as a metaphor for his enthusiasm and excitement when it comes to Patty. Doug also named his volcano the Mighty Volcano, which makes us wonder if anything else has a nickname. Technically speaking, this moment comes from the Rugrats movie, which was released by Paramount Pictures back in 1998, but Nickelodeon was still involved with the production, and therefore we say it counts. In this scene, the Rugrats go into a lab and find a room full of newborns. These babies are looking over their respective bodies, likely looking at their belly buttons after the doctor cut them, as the line, "They cut my cord," is said by one of them. Only then, a diaper gets lifted and the line, "Consider yourself lucky," is replied as the toddler looks down at his junk. Looks like someone got circumcised. Cartoons often find clever ways to put in suggestive and adult content into their shows that is designed to fly right over the heads of the kids watching the shows. Maybe it's for the adults, maybe it's for the kids when they're older. Regardless, many have them, including this hilarious bit from Hey Arnold. Timing and framing is everything, and in this case, Gramps happens to be standing next to the sign that points to him, instructing readers to try my sausage. While this obviously means the food, the way the shot is framed with Gramps makes it seem like the old man is offering something more than just the food on the menu, if you know what we mean. Speaking of excitement in that department, let's check back in on SpongeBob and what sort of antics are getting him into trouble. SpongeBob is definitely a man, and that man, even though he's a sponge, has some baseline urges. So SpongeBob seems to find some level of enjoyment by watching nature docs, specifically about marine animals, in this case, sea anemones. He seems very attentive watching the show, sitting at the edge of his seat. In fact, when asked what he's watching by Gary, who randomly walks in, SpongeBob freaks out and states that he was watching sports as he changes the channel. So, in other words, watching marine wildlife shows for SpongeBob is basically the same as us humans watching, well, you get it. Let's keep the attention on SpongeBob here just for a few more minutes. Or rather, to be more specific, Squidward and his reef blower. We're not saying what he does is weird, even though it is, but who are we to judge? Squidward puts up with a lot of crap, so if he finds some enjoyment playing with the reef blower, why not? He uses it on his face to make silly faces, uses it to propel him from side to side, and even puts it directly onto his squid bits. Because when it rains, it pours. Childhood is seriously getting tarnished here. Now back to Rocco's modern life, which is just about as clear and to the point as you can get short of Ren and Stimpy. It's pretty amazing what these shows got away with, as they're not subtle and pretty on the nose with what they were referencing. Case in point, this scene from the episode Gutterballs, which features Rocco, Heifer, and Filbert playing a board game together. Pretty innocent, right? Except the board game is called Spank the Monkey and features a large monkey piece with a giant butt. Nothing like teaching kids to spank the monkey. How did parents watch these scenes back in the day and think they were okay for our young eyes? But there's more to Rocco's modern life than spanking some monkeys. This one in particular deals with that one job that Rocco once had, and once you realize what it is, your childhood is basically forever scarred now. So, we're sorry about this. The job Rocco gets is that of a phone operator. That doesn't sound too bad. Only, it's not just a phone operator job. He's working at a very, very hot line, if you catch our drift.
He on
Just
the
look at
party
the instructions
line
on the wall that he has to follow.
Hey!
Anyone here want to call Rocco up? He doesn't sound too enthusiastic about his "oh babies," so it may be more worth it for the laughs. Chances are you didn't watch the 1987 movie Fatal Attraction starring Glenn Close and Michael Douglas as a kid. Or if you did, your parents were very lax about letting you watch it. That's why, as a kid, you likely didn't catch the reference to the mature movie in an episode of the Rugrats. But there was such a reference, and the episode in question is referred to as Cradle Attraction, because of course it is. In it, the show imitates the stalking that featured heavily in the risque movie and involved a new girl named Megan stalking Chucky after falling for him. There's even a shot that replicates the movie. Weird to see coming from babies. At least a deadly ice pick wasn't involved. It seems that most of Hey Arnold's mature jokes come at the expense of Gramps, but that's okay because we certainly got a laugh out of them. After worrying about his age, Arnold comforts Grandpa and tells him he's not that old and that he has plenty of brain cells left. However, Grandpa reveals that may not be the case because he was in attendance at Woodstock, and if we put two and two together, Grandpa may have been on some powerful stuff back in 1969.
Bro, that's
Most
crazy!
of the adult jokes in animated shows are more raunchy in nature, but this is one of the few that actually indirectly references substances. Trippy. Here's another joke at the expense of the elderly, and it really makes us wonder what Nickelodeon was up to in those writing rooms. But needless to say, the older the character, the more adult the joke can be, we figure. In this episode of Rugrats, Grandpa rents some movies for the babies to watch on their own time. The kids' movies include a couple of Reptar hits like Reptar Come Home and Reptar Redux. But behind that movie is a copy of Lonely Space Vixens, a film that Grandpa states is for after they go to bed. Grandpa isn't just a freak, but a super freak.
Man.
Hopefully he went to the movie rental store alone and didn't have to drag the babies into the back room area to pick out the special film. As mentioned, there are some weird things in Rocco's modern life, but none of them are perhaps as weird as what you're about to see here. This particular entry features the cow Heifer, so yeah, it's gonna get pretty freaky. In this scene, Heifer falls asleep in some hay and is having a rather peaceful sleep when a farmer begins to relieve him of his milk by strapping some device to him. Fun fact though, only female cows can be milked and Heifer is very much a male. Heifer's face says it all, and the analogy couldn't be more obvious as to what Rocco's feeling. Heifer enjoys it so much that his eyes turn to stars and he passes out with a smile on his face. Now who can honestly say that?
Bro!
There's nothing like some good wordplay and some euphemisms to make a seemingly innocent scene turn extremely dirty. Case in point, this scene from the Rugrats. The scene in question features a toy called Mr. Boppo, which is a punching bag with a clown face on it created by Stu. The toy was eventually lent to Chucky, who spent large portions of time alone in his room with Mr. Boppo, and the worry was that he was bopping his Boppo all afternoon while tucked away in a room instead of playing with his friends. How could we not think of that as anything but dirty? While playing with his Boppo probably was too big of a problem as a toddler, it was definitely more of an issue as Chucky got all grown up. Animaniacs had some seriously clever wordplay that may even stump some adults when it comes to its dirty jokes. This one is yet another example of clever wordplay that gets really dirty once you get it. Yakko gets asked a seemingly innocent question. Can he conjugate? Flustered, he responds with the revelation that he's never even kissed a girl. The teacher corrects him and says that she'll conjugate with him. Now what word sounds like conjugate? Oh! Ding ding ding! That's right, that's the true meaning of the joke, and yeah, it's pretty raunchy once you understand the joke. Remember when we said we could make a whole list of things that happened in Ren and Stimpy? We meant it, and that's why that show is going to close out this particular list because it's a crazy one. For whatever reason, Stimpy has a log on his backside and Ren needs to saw the wood. He puts said saw right on his manhood with a harness and begins to saw back and forth quite aggressively. Not only that, but once he tires out, the saw goes completely limp. Could this be any more obvious? Stimpy even enjoys the whole process a little too much, with animated hearts floating above his head at one point. Just don't watch this clip with the sound turned up too high, or people in your house may question just exactly what you're watching. Well, that's enough internet for one day, don't you?
That's... That is so wild, man. As kids, you don't think like that, you know? You still have your innocence. Like, that's just... Woo, that's a lot. If you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button for me. Thank you guys for commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.